breakfast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Omnic Lab. Another week, another episode. We're here this week with episode 165. My name's Rob. Joining me, as always, is Andres Gomez. But this week, we're going a little deep. We're going deep again on Torbjorn 2.0 because he's got a big update. So we brought on not one, but two guests, thanks to our good friend Fui500 on the ladder. Welcome, Fui500 and Crow. Or your username is what?
No,
Pro like Crow?
Yeah, that's correct. Pro like Crow.
Yep. Pro like Crow. Welcome, guys. Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we got the whole cavalry today. We figured, there's been so many changes to Torb since the last time we did an episode, and we were looking at it. It's been almost a year or more than that since we did it, and with all the changes, it was just time that we gave Torbjorn a little bit of love. So we brought extra love today with two guests, and we should have a jam-packed episode talking about our little friend Torbjorn.
Yeah. And if you're new to the show is basically about a lab-like format, kind of think scientific method, trial and error. Andres and I are kind of the guinea pigs of the strategy, trying to learn and play, and then we bring on professionals like these guys that stream all the time and help us out. So a few announcements before we get into a mini interview. Our game night for this month is every month is on the last Friday. So this is September 27th. If you guys want some coaching, our patreon.com/omniclab setup at the $2.50 level and above, or the platinum level and higher, you can have a coaching session per month. I did one with the wonderful Cthulhu that Andres had been coaching on DPS. We gave him a little bit of a different style, doing some Ana coaching this time. And if you guys, just as another reminder, if you want to recommend the show, we're on Spotify, so you can send those friends of yours that use Spotify there. But let's get into getting to know our guests a little bit. We'll start with Fui because we invited you first, and then we'll get to Crow second because he's already got a big fan in his room right now on the live stream. So he's got his friend here. All right, Fui, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Fui500, as you already know. And I play a lot of Torb. I think I have about like 2,000, 3,000 hours on the in the game in total, and then like 1,700 in the character.
Oh wow! So like 1/3 of your playtime is all Torb.
Yes.
Nice.
Let me see. Yeah, about 1,700 Torb, 2,800 in the game. So yeah, and I've played him since I'd say honestly the open beta to now. And yeah, since season 1, I've been GM top 500.
All right.
Tell us a little bit about playing Torbjorn.
What?
You said you're already top 500, mainly playing Torbjorn since season 1.
So season 1, that's got its own little history. You want me to go over that now or later?
Yeah. Let us know a little bit.
Yeah, so season 1, I started playing the game, and I picked up Torb in quick play and stuff because I transitioned from TF2, where I played engineer and I played heavy mainly. Those were my two mains, and Torb really filled that niche for me, and I loved it. So I played him in competitive, and I played Reinhardt because there wasn't really a heavy equivalent. There was Bastion, but the movement, it's too different. So I played Torb and Ryan in competitive in season 1. And eventually, until about season 4, I stopped playing Ryan and other characters entirely to start one-tricking, and slowly I've stopped doing that. But I never really got to play Torb back then in season 4 and 3, so I was like...
It was like a sin to play Torb back then. Like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah, it started out really nice because the game was early on, everybody was happy, and, just winning was what people wanted. But, because I was filled into that main tank slot, everybody wanted me to play main tank over Torb.
Of course.
So it's I chose a better option. Always play the character that I want. And
Very cool.
So tell us a little bit about like some of the things outside of like transitioning from engineer that you found to be really enjoyable about the hero, or something that like you really started learning that maybe when you moved to transition to Torb, over the course of time, you've gone through all of these different balance changes. And like, of course, now we have the rework. So talk to us a little bit about the journey of kind of playing the hero through all these changes here.
yeah, so I think honestly, to start out, just the best thing about Torb outside of like NG and stuff is this gun. His gun felt really nice for a projectile weapon. And I hadn't really messed around with too many projectile guns in like other games or anything. So it was a really unique thing to like get into, having this arcing gun and learning about leading shots and all that. But specifically when it comes to like the changes and all that, it honestly kind of felt like I adjusted easily, but some things definitely changed the playstyle of the character more to like what I was used to in TF2. Because in TF2 you could play different types of engineer by swapping your weapons out. So because they didn't really have like we're going to build 30 heroes, we have one character that can have a bunch of different guns that change the style. And one of the styles I played for NG was a battle engineer, where he had a mini sentry that would do less damage, build up faster, but he played a more active role in the game. And that's kind of what happened with Torb. He went from a character that was like, you sit back, you have your scrap, you go get that, you toss out armor.
Yeah, very defense centric, right? Very passive in that sense.
Yeah, and you can't really mess up. There's not much room for error, because if the turret died back then you have to take a long time to get it all back up, and the process is like very snowball heavy. But now Torb, he's honestly, for me at least, it's been a lot easier transitioning into newer Torb, because that's the style that I did in TF2. You just toss out a turret, run at people, and run around, and you're more free.
Very nice. What about Mr. Crow? What's your story?
My story? Well, it's kind of similar to Fuey's, where I came from TF2, played Demo Man mainly. On the pubs, I would pub star as an engineer, because that's just funny to run around and shotgun people. But yeah, I came from TF2 background, played it semi-professionally, and then I'm a bit older than other people, and I kind of had to focus on my actual career, so had to stop playing video games for a living. Not for a living, sorry, just stop playing video games as much as I did. had to act like an adult for a bit. And
well, hey, we've all been there. We know how that goes. That's why we became podcasters. Now we can talk about games all day long.
But yeah, then I moved to TF2, to Overwatch naturally. Obviously, just hey, new class-based shooter, go for it.
Team Fortress 3.
Yep, more or less. And I played. What I'm known for is for Junkrat. Primarily, I've been one-tricking Junkrat since the beginning. I saw other people playing him, and they said he was terrible, and I was like, you know what? Everyone sucks. They just don't know how to
prove
play
you
the game.
wrong.
Yeah, that's literally what it came down to. It was just like pure spite, which normally fuels me. It was just like, yeah, everyone's wrong. I can figure it out.
Sometimes that's the best motivation.
Yeah, whatever gets you going, really. If it gets you up so I just, through pure spite, just one-trick Junkrat, made it top 500 in Season 2. And I've been staying up there ever since. And somehow, unlike Fuey, managed to dodge the banhammer. Because if you want to talk about that ever,
I don't know how.
That's a whole different topic. I just remember Fuey's because it was 10 p.m. Thanksgiving night, and they're like, it wasn't an automated system, and I was like,
How about
Thanksgiving shift workers?
We'll save that one for the end of the episode. For those who stay till the end, we'll hear the little treat of the band story.
Yeah. But yeah, so I've been one-tricking Junkrat for the longest time. I play Torb every now and then. I really do. How Fuey plays TF2 engineer is how I played it, and I love the new Torb. It's just that I don't play him. Is he competitively viable?
You would say that your old style of play fits the newer version of the hero.
For sure, where I just throw a turret and I want to shotgun people. I want to find duels on the flanks, and I want to shotgun them as fast as possible.
You get a bit more initiative and a bit more wiggle room for kind of wiggle for error, I guess you could say.
Yep.
Like you can play a little bit riskier and not get so heavily punished.
Yeah,
Correct.
very cool.
And I was gonna say with his overload skill, like it changes a duel completely, considering old Torb.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the coolest things in Overwatch, that you can have two players that excel at a hero but play it very differently, right? Very different styles, very differently approach. And maybe we can talk a little bit about today, kind of how both of you maybe approach the hero a little bit differently.
Sure.
Yeah, why not?
All right.
Wanna go for
well,
it
let's
right
start
now?
with the basics right there.
Okay.
We'll start with the basics right there. So let's go all the way back and consider that someone has not played TF2 at all and is just now jumping into Overwatch, and they sit in Hero Select and are like, a Swedish boy, I want to play. And he has a cool gun and it's a projectile, so I'm gonna go test it out. What is some of your first like opening advice to somebody for the hero for the first time? And then what is some of the kind of like common pitfalls and mistakes that they may fall into? Think like bad habits.
I would say Torb is generally what is it? It's low skill floor. It's where he has a very easy like entry barrier.
Mhm.
He's a character that people can generally get into, and it's all there for you. There's no like extreme mechanics that you need to kind of learn and pick up, which I think is really nice for new players. But they get really caught up in like the turret aspect of the character and the unique factor so much that they forget that he's a character. And they end up healing the turret, playing with the turret, doing so much with the turret that they don't do anything with themselves.
That's a good way to put it, because yeah, when you first start playing the game and you pick Torbjorn, you have like this awesome turret that seems so overpowered, right? Because he has auto aim and it's like killing the enemy team constantly. So you think to yourself like, okay, this is the character, right? Like I just need to keep this turret alive. I need to get creative with it. But like you're saying, Torbjorn himself is such a powerhouse, right? And like Crow was saying, his shotgun is super powerful. Tools like his overpower is super powerful as well. And you can definitely take over fights just with the hero himself. The turret later on in the game, at least for you guys, almost becomes like a bonus, right?
Yeah. Like
Yeah,
I'd
new players
say,
treat it like a mini game, right? It's not like the actual game you're playing. It's like you want to play the turret mini game instead of like winning the objective or playing the character.
yeah. I'd say like the lower skill level the players, the more the turret gets value. And then like as you go up, the turret goes down and the player goes up. So
Mm-hmm.
in like GM range or whatever, the turret people they don't have trouble with it, but it still helps and it's still an annoyance. So it's like it's there, but you really have to have a focus on yourself and being able to aim.
You just got to view it more like a cooldown rather than like a thing to be maintained, like a mini game.
Yeah. I mean, you don't want it to die. Like having it die is really, really bad because it is on a longer cooldown, and it does
Sure.
provide good like damage and utility. It's like it's different than your average ability, because your average ability you just toss out and you let it go. Well, the turret you want to place it like a lot of it goes into like placement, where you place it, why you place it, and all that. And as you get higher up, it is less valuable, but it's still something you want to keep up, because if you don't, then you're down in ability, and
Sure.
there's no real reason to play the character. Then you could just play McCree or something.
Right.
That's fair.
You might as well play a character that maybe has more powerful abilities by himself, right? Rather than the splitting with the turret. What do you guys? So Torbjorn has gone through a lot of iteration, right? The Torbjorn that we all started with is no longer here, and the Torbjorn we have now is very different. How do you guys think Torbjorn fits the roster right now? What are some of its strengths? When do you want a Torbjorn? What sort of role does he fit when you pick that DPS?
No, before we go on this, are you talking like from a bronze level or GM level, or where are you thinking this at?
Well, let's talk about that. How do you think is different between bronze and GM? How does that evolve?
I think, I mean, like Fury said, at the bronze level, the turret gets a little bit more done. At the higher level, it becomes more of a deterrent, especially with the more agile characters that even the higher level people have trouble hitting. I mean, me and Fury argue a lot, and I always like having sentries in the back, especially now with the Doomfists and the Tracers. They're coming a little more popular. Genji's still not that much popular, but we always fight about that because like if Doomfist is in your back lines, it really sucks. But if he's taken, I think it's like 52 damage a second from the turret, all of a sudden those shields that he gets are a little, little weaker, and all of a sudden he's a little bit more. You can manage him better. At the
easier
lower
to
levels,
focus, and he can't be as aggressive, right?
Right. He has some issues, and Doomfist is kind of on that teeter totter where it's like if he has 50 less health, he's going to die every single time. The turret can provide that.
Yeah.
And it's reliable. It's very reliable, even if it's low damage. It's very consistent, and that's kind of something. Yeah, it can't miss. That's the beauty of it. So at the lower levels, like that would kill a Doomfist, right? Like someone tries to flank you and they don't deal with the turret, they're going to die. At the higher levels, it's an early warning system, I would say. I kind of like it for that. Like there's a giant blue laser pointing at where the enemy is at. I guess that helps lower levels and higher levels. More of an audio cue higher, more of a visual lower.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, I'd say, you know how there are characters that are better for shot calling? I'd say Torb would be great for shot callers. Because you have turret, so if turret goes off on a flank, even if you don't see the laser, you can still hear the turret firing. So you can notify your team at least that somebody's on the flank.
There's someone there.
Well, you can see it, right? Because you can see
without
the outline of the turret at least through walls, and you can see it kind of firing if you're paying attention to it.
Yeah, but like all that stuff is really good for like a shot caller, and I think the role of Torb helps be like that for
Yeah,
I think
I can.
basically
Yeah, that makes
totally see that. What do you think you would bring Torb versus bringing somebody else like McCree or Hanzo or Ash or Doomfist himself?
It's usually the cross and not to make it too high level right away. It's the cross flank pressure. Usually you throw the turret over there, and then I sit over there with the team.
And when you say over there, you mean like opposite sides of the battle, right? I'm just saying it for our audio listeners so they know.
Yeah, sorry.
They're just split up.
Yes, they're split. So like Horizon Lunar is a really good example. Like teams will put the sentry on the right flank, and then they'll hold the high ground on the left flank. All right, you have to have full attention on the whole team on that one flank, and all of a sudden you're just constantly getting picked from the other side. But you don't want to move a shield for 50 damage a second, right? You don't want to have to turn in that, and it's just this constant pressure, and as long as the sentry's getting value, then the damage really does add up.
It's like this little bee sting that's constantly poking you on the side.
Right.
It's small enough that they can maybe ignore it for a little bit, but not for too long, right?
Right. I mean, look at Mercy's healing is 50 a second, and Torb's turret damage is 52. So technically, if Torb's turret's hitting someone and Mercy's getting healed, the healing and damage cancel each other out. So the Mercy's been negated, which is, I'll take that advantage over everything.
Yeah. If we can too, it's good.
Can we talk about this one new feature that they rolled out with Torbjorn most recently, which is the ability to dictate what the turret is going to shoot by virtue of allowing Torb to shoot something first. So if Torbjorn is shooting something, this is not necessarily a basic or advanced or intermediate tip. This is just a change that's been made. That when you are shooting something as Torbjorn, the turret, if it's possible, will prioritize shooting that thing over anything else until you stop firing, in which case the turret will just take its own priority system, I believe, by virtue of how much remaining health the target has within its LOS. I think that might be how it works now, but I'll defer to our guests here on that one.
I'm pretty sure how it functions is you fire at the enemy, they get marked, they're the priority until they leave vision.
Okay.
They leave turret line of sight. And then whoever it focuses next, I'm pretty sure is whoever's closest.
Yep.
I don't think
it's a proximity thing.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to do with health.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It kind of sucks because if somebody's low, it doesn't prioritize them.
Yep.
But it's all based
unless
on...
you shoot them, right? Unless you...
Yeah.
Do you have to hit them for the turret to register? Or is it
you
like...
have to hit with the primary.
Okay.
You have to hit with primary, body shot, headshot, anything. You can actually, if you hit a tracer in the head with the primary fire and turret's able to see her, it'll take her out instantly.
Oh, nice.
It's really good
Wow.
for 200 hit point heroes. If you headshot them, I mean, I think I've seen Fuey's stream where he headshots a Pharaoh, turret immediately targets them, and if they're not getting healed, they die in a second.
They're
Right.
just dead. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow, that's really strong. If you can, so that then goes all the way back to our very first basic tip on the turret itself is placement does matter, because if you can set yourself up for these split push or these split positions where you can take advantage of shooting something and then the turret is on the opposite side to confirm it, then you're already one up on the fight, and it's a 5v6 now.
Let's
Good.
talk a little bit about Torbjorn as an attack hero versus a defense hero. I think that before Torbjorn used to be very confined to defense, right? But with the rework, now we're seeing him sometimes on attack, sometimes even on maps like Control working really well. Do you guys still see him as mainly a defense hero that can sometimes be played on attack, or you guys think that both ways is fair game with Torbjorn nowadays?
You want to go, Crow?
No, that's you, man.
Yeah, I'm looking at you
I mean-
smiling.
I
here.
mean, you're known for your Dorado attack, Torb, right?
I'm gonna say right now, I think Torbjorn's always a better offensive hero. Old Torb, new Torb.
Okay, let's talk about that. Why do you think he's so good in attack?
So Torb's a good zoner. That's essentially what you're doing. If you for defense, right? Essentially defense needs to hold multiple waves over and over and over again. But on offense, you win a single fight, you get a pick, you're at such a major advantage. And Torb takes that advantage and snowballs with it. Because now they're down an enemy. But you're up another player. Additionally, you're not 6, you're 7. So they have to deal with you, they have to deal with the turret, they have to deal with whatever old Torbolt, new Torbolt. They have to deal with all of this extra pressure, and they're pushed out of specific zones, out of the good points, the parts of the map that defense gives you as an advantage. They can't go there anymore because now they're down people. The problem that occurs on attack is that generally it's harder to dislodge them, but once they're dislodged, Torb gets a huge advantage over like defense. Defense is only really better because you start with a natural good advantage of where you can put your turret and where your team defends.
You start with the positional advantage on defense always, right? Because you're the one who gets to choose it, while the attackers sort of have to engage into that position. So you're saying once you're able to break through that first position of the enemy where they have the advantage and you're able to get the positioning advantage, like say you push them off the payload and now they have to regroup and now you have the payload. Now it's going to be harder for them to come and attack you back because it's almost like now you have set up your own defense while on attack. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, payload's even different. Like before I was kind of talking about like making them on an even level or slightly below by dislodging them from like high ground. But payload, if you add in payload, you have the positional advantage now. Payload is healing, it's constantly moving, it's putting pressure on them to back them into a corner. Plus, with Torb's natural zoning capabilities, it messes with people really hard.
Yeah, and I want to reinstate the first thing Fuey said, where it's like, if the enemy is down a player, when you have Torb's turret and Torb himself put constant pressure on people, and now that we're in the 2-2-2 environment, if you think if any one hero dies, all of a sudden it's just a lot more pressure on the enemy, and they have less tools to deal with it. And again, the turret at first seems so minimal that you don't really want to focus on it, but man, it bites teams in the butt really, really quick if you start ignoring it for long periods of time. And if you don't have the tools to deal with it, it's a lost point because you're constantly getting pressured and no good ways to deal with it.
And we have seen that a little bit even in the Overwatch League, right? With Atlanta Reign, for example, when the Fran was playing, and he would play Torbjorn on
Ilios.
on Ilios, yeah, specifically on Well, and they would do really good, specifically because of the reason that you guys are talking about. Once they would take over the point, it was really hard for the enemy team to take the point back, even in the GOATS meta sometimes, because it was so much pressure that the turret was providing, and especially in GOATS, there was no way of dealing with the turret very reliably, right?
Correct.
They did something like that. A couple other teams were experimenting with it on maps like Busan when you're playing on the temple area. because it's such an open forum for you to really set up the turret in these really great like corners that it has a lot of vision and a pretty good section of protection that you can, like Crow is talking about. It's really good for splitting the turret and your current position a lot in maps like that, where you can move around, you can get a lot of sight lines, both you and the turret, and there's a lot of safe zones for both of you.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the 222 thing that Crow brought up. I think that's a good transition because we want to always talk in this new format about tanks that you synergize well with, another DPS that pairs well with you, and then what supports you're kind of looking for in the structure. If maybe you're new to the hero and you're not really as comfortable, what are some recommendations that you have for looking at what people are choosing in Hero Select to kind of help you out?
To be fair, I would honestly say synergy matters a lot less over what's really meta or strong. Because, like, no matter what good synergies you have, like, I honestly think Hitscan are way better with Torb because Torb, he can get somebody low, but he can't really finish them off consistently. So if you have somebody to do that for you, it really helps. But when it comes to, like, if they're running a meta composition, like currently, what is it?
Orisa Sigma.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're kind of, your synergy doesn't matter as much as dealing with them. Like, their composition is more effective of yours than you are of theirs, because they're not really going to mind if you have a McCree and a Torb, because you're not really doing too much to their shield. You're not getting rid of it. And you can both flank and you can do different strategies, but there's a lot more effort you have to put in as the players on your team than on theirs.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Since the meta has changed a little bit, how has that affected players like you that play a lot of Torbjorn? How have you had to adapt your playstyle playing that hero with double shields, for example? I mean, with his ultimate, I feel like sometimes you should be able to do some heavy damage to that kind of composition, but you tell me.
I mean, personally, I've still been trying to figure out like what to do, because I like to have like an aggressive playstyle, but you can't really do that with him. And I think generally the most successful thing for me is just sitting back with an Orisa and just spamming for like a half hour. It sucks, but adding that shield break of your turret plus you plus everyone else to break theirs, it works really well, and it's on the more boring side of things, but you can flank and stuff, but it's really hard to flank around those compositions. And like for his ultimate, I honestly don't feel like I get ult ever because of all the shields. So
you build it so slowly now with that, plus the ultimate change.
Yeah, plus Torb ults doesn't go through shields, so
I thought it did. It bounces off.
No, the
No.
projectile hits it and drops.
if it drops in front, it should, if I remember, do damage to the Orisa shield. So it'll do damage
It'll
to that.
pool.
But the problem is they can just move the shield, they can move everybody. It's really hard to get them. So you have to do like tricky ones, like tricky shots where you shoot behind them, stop them from going that way. But it's really up to them to not walk into it. I think like the lower level you are, the easier it's going to be. You just cut them off from moving forward. They can't progress, you break their shield. Or you wait until their shield's down and combo with Sigma ult, actually. Sigma, now I think about it, Sigma actually is a really good character to combo with Torbolt. Because once he raises everybody up, you Torbolt where they're going to land, they actually have like this brief moment where they're stunned, slowed, rooted. Yeah. So they can't move out of the ultimate, and the ultimate does, let's see, how much damage?
Is it 230 against armor?
160 DPS normal.
I put it in the show notes, I think.
Yeah. So it's doing 160 damage and
per second, right?
Yeah, and you can't get out. So it's good for comboing with Sigma, but really, outside of that, in these shield compositions, you can't really do too much with it. A lot of it's just passive play until someone's shield breaks. You pop overload, try and kill their Orisa or someone before it all goes down. It's all like a lot of buildup until the action, and the action is a brief time frame where things can change, and then it goes back to the buildup again.
Yeah, it always seems like right now you're looking for that tiny window of opportunity between when the Orisa shield is down, seeing if you can just squeeze
Yes.
something in there. What do you think, Crow?
Well, again, the turret is deceptive. If you have it behind your own double shields, it's going to be doing damage the entire time. And Torb's damage, I think, is like 98 DPS against the shield, which is lower for a shield, like against shields. But the turret again adds 52 to that, and so now you're in the 140s, which is actually pretty significant. You're better than most heroes at that point against shield break. It doesn't feel
Especially if
strong.
you're burning your overloads on cooldown.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Torb has a pretty large clip, as long as you're using your mouse one and not your right clicks. Yeah, your mouse one's only one ammo, and in that case, he has 18 shots, right?
I think so.
Yep,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's the rivet gun.
Yep. So you got 18
Yeah,
shots
single
a clip,
rivets.
which is 18 damage or 18 shots for 70 damage a pop.
70 each.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's one of the biggest clips in the game. So you can keep on hitting pressure on the targets that you can hit, and shields are easily hit. So hey, it does give you some good pressure. If the shields break, the turret automatically hits whatever's behind it. Again, Sigma ult, since we can almost right now, we'll just assume Sigma's always in the game on both teams.
Yeah, I mean
that's
it's
an assumption you have
it's
to
a
make.
safe assumption in nowadays.
So hey, if you rise up the team, all right, great. The turret's going to shoot the people above the shield now.
Yeah.
I mean, with the current supports, what is it? Lucio Moira is the current meta. I mean, on the ladder, pretty much anything can go, but like truly meta is Lucio Moira. And again,
She's
with
a
the
map.
whole, yep, and with Moira, damaging through shields and just getting 70 DPS off with her ultimate. I mean, that's good finish for again what Fury was saying, where Torb can get some damage in, but he needs some help putting people down. And Moira is someone who can consistently put people down. In fact, Overwatch League, like her stats are stupid. Like
Yeah, they're really
she's
ridiculous
getting
right now.
insanely high eliminations and damage. It's just she's
Lots
very
of
good.
confirm kills and assists and stuff. Yeah, she's just doing all of these extra things on top of
Healing.
getting ridiculous healing numbers.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
because
and
it's Moira.
And I feel like her and Lucio are the only two healers that really don't care about shields that much, right? They don't care about getting
No.
into like the middle of the fray, which is kind of
Correct.
like what you need right now. And by what you guys are saying about Torb, it seems like Torb is not in the worst spot this meta, but he's also not in the best spot, right? He seems like in a very middle ground where you can get away with him as a DPS, but he's not going to maybe excel like Doomfist maybe is excelling right
Correct.
now.
I would say a skilled player on the ladder with Torb would still fare pretty well. When you start getting to like the high levels of top 500 and of course Overwatch League, and if someone's running the meta against you, you're probably going to lose. But I think a character is pretty well balanced if he works everywhere else except for top 500. I
Top
think that's
level,
a pretty
yeah.
I consider
Yeah.
that a pretty well balanced hero.
And you guys did mention that sometimes Torbjorn can be a huge deterrent for heroes like Doomfist, right? And imagine heroes like Reaper, kind of like the same deal, right? Those heroes that like getting in the back line and sort of abusing their mechanics because they can get in and out. But once the turret is there, it does put some pressure on those heroes where they can't engage as freely. And again, those heroes are very meta right now.
Yep, and just getting higher on the ladder in general from the lower levels. It's funny because like usually the big problem heroes are like the evasive ones. Like when you're at the gold and diamond levels, I know you guys come up against tracers that you just can't touch. There's nothing you can do against them. Same thing with Genjis or Doomfists. And if you're looking just to climb on the ladder, I think it's an understatement how much the turret will protect your supports and just put those players down.
Just an extra security blanket more than anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to call it a crutch, but the turret's going to do its job, and it's going to do it pretty well.
No, but that's his strength, right? At least from what I'm hearing from you guys, against very high mobility heroes, especially the lower elos that you are, Torbjorn can be a huge counter and a huge asset to kind of like keep those heroes at bay.
Yeah. Like This comes back to like what I said earlier. He's got like a low skill floor where everything's really simple and all that. And the turret's gonna help you take out these players the lower skill level they are. Like especially flankers, Tracer, Genji, Doomfist, any character like that, where they're not going in if they're on lower level and they're not going in one clipping someone in a second. They have to take more time to kill people, and the turret doesn't. It doesn't matter. You're gonna die within the time frame that exists with your HP. That number is going down at a consistent rate, and the longer you're in there, the worse off you're gonna be.
What do you guys think is Torbjorn's biggest weakness?
That's a lot.
Well, let's talk about a few then.
Honestly, I mean, if like the easiest one to notice is the terrible god awful hitbox.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I probably
gigantic-
agree to that.
Meatball that is Torb and his huge crit box is insane.
He
He is
is
one of the
easy
biggest-
to headshot. Yeah.
He was one of the biggest headshot in the game. In fact, what was that when they reworked him? They reduced it by 20%, and it's still
Still
one of
very
the
big.
biggest. Yes, so that means before the rework, Fury would get like shot in the leg, and it would be like a headshot. It was
Shoot the
really,
bottom
really
of your
stupid.
beard, and it's like, oh, that's your
Yes,
head.
No, yes, it was.
Actually,
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If my face were Torbjorn's, like down here would be his beard crease. That's his head hitbox still. Like going out to this side, that's all his head hitbox.
And his smokestacks. That's, I think, the thing that pisses me off the most is the smokestacks on his shoolders. That's part of his hitbox. It's not a headshot, but it's still like if you're trying to
okay.
hide, a good Widow is going to shoot those and kill you.
Yeah, you
behind
can
cover.
still shoot like shooting like the elbow or like the feet when you can see them, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's his hitbox. You think for a short character, like, oh, that's a huge advantage, and you're just like, no. It's like Odd Job in Nintendo 64. You just aim down and it's all headshots.
So for those Widow players out there, just get above Torb and shoot somewhere. You'll probably hit him in the head.
Yes.
I will say I'm the most consistent when I'm shooting at Winston's and Torbjorn's. It's just really hard to miss their heads.
Yeah. I don't know. Fury doesn't. Torb has issues like he has to win a duel with Overload, and if it doesn't win,
He's gone. He doesn't.
he is.
That's his Overload is his dueling, his mobility, his extra HP, his shield break. It's everything there.
Yes.
And if you lose that, you're down for I think like 12
12
seconds.
seconds. It's 12 seconds. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Overload, because Overload does seem like the ability that a lot of really good Torbs revolve around, right? Sort of like Reapers, when the Wraith is up, they can be very aggressive because they get like that jail out of free card. Torbjorn seems like that with Overload as well, where you want to take most of your engages, your aggression, your duels when it's up, but when it's down, you sort of seem like you want to take the back seat and let your team kind of take the reins a little bit, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, you go ahead.
You're really helpless without it because you don't have any way to rely on like not dying now, because anybody dives you in once that's gone, you're toast. You can't do anything. You have turret, but turret's not gonna help you. It's not like other characters that have CC like Zarya Bubble or whatever on a lower cooldown, stuns or anything like this. That's gone, and it's gone for a while.
Yeah, we should note that with the Torb nerf that happened, quote unquote, recently, like in like the last 3 or 4 months, where I mean, Jeff said he's like, man, Torb at the lower ranks is just overpowered because he overloads with his shotgun. His shotgun so his shotgun was already the worst shotgun in the game. It was 150 before, right? But its fall off started at 70 meters, and they nerfed it down to 120. Or was it 120 and then they nerfed it down to like 100? I forget the exact numbers. But they nerfed the shotgun damage recently, and it was because of overload. So what that means is outside of overload, his right click
bad still.
is horrible now. I don't want to say unbind your right click as Torb, but without overload, it takes 3 ammo a shot, and you're looking to do like 100 damage tops. And at 7 meters, you're already hitting fall off. That's not counting spread. I mean, at 7 meters,
Right.
it's doing very,
That's-
very little.
Would you
It gets-
prioritize your primary damage versus your secondary fire, even at close range, while outside of overload?
100%.
Yes.
It takes less ammo. It's more consistent because it's not an RNG random spread, random location shotgun,
Mm-hmm.
and
Quicker.
you can backpedal and it's not losing damage.
Yep.
Like the only real advantage of shotgun is its time to kill because the bullets do come out faster. And it also works better for a handicap for players that can't aim because you're firing more shots, so you're more likely to hit.
Mm-hmm.
But that's about it. Primary fire is essentially like you're playing McCree, but it's a projectile now.
It does
The
hit
other thing-
very hard.
The other thing about that projectile is kind of the misnomer. It's like, well, if you got a shotgun, you should shoot at close range because you can't miss. But at this point, when the shotgun is not doing as much damage as the rivet gun could be doing with a primary, and especially with a headshot, when you're closer range, you have a higher chance of hitting that shot anyways, regardless of if it's a spread or if it's a single hit, because the targets are closer, so you have more of a room to kind of aim and hit them, whether it's a headshot or not at that point. You still are getting value from there. So there's a little bit of a misnomer there with it. And the only other shotgun heroes are Reaper and Roadhog, I believe, unless I'm missing one.
I mean, you can kind of count Diva. It's like Reaper, Roadhog, Diva.
Oh yeah, a little bit. She has a big spread.
I mean, it's a spread, but
It's a
she
spread,
suffers some
yeah.
fall off. But all the
That's fair.
shotguns usually fall off at like 10 meters is when their damage falls off.
Now, I do think it's worth noting what Few was saying, how depending on your level of skill and your aim, sometimes it's still better to use your secondary fire, right? If you find yourself hitting more shots with that one and you're getting more damage in less amount of time, then it's still very much worth it for you to be using that ability. But as your aim improves and you get more confident with your rivet gun, you're able to land those headshots at close range, mid range, and so on, then it does seem that you want to start to transition into mostly just using that as your primary fire.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can talk about that a bit too. Like, so you can be like, yeah, you can use the shotgun. Shotguns are good for close range, but Torb's shotgun takes 3 ammunition per shot and puts you in a very long reload as well. And outside of this, you shouldn't be close to people with Torb. He's not really like when you have the utility of a long range weapon that has no fall off damage, there's pretty much zero reason you should be close to anyone to really ever use the shotgun. And there's no reason to not backpedal away from them. Like you can use overload to try and pop them out quickly, but you can save overload for if another person dives you. It's all about like risk versus reward at that point.
It makes a lot of sense. The other thing too, this is kind of a side note, is the armor reduction thing that I think is why the rivet gun is so exaggerated when you're going 1v1 against tanks. Like you're doing a lot less damage if they've got armor on them because you're losing half damage per pellet. So you have basically 105 damage in that total round that goes down to like, 50, 51.
It goes down to rivet gun, like primary fire almost.
Yeah, because your primary fire, if it's not critting on armor, just takes, I think it's just 68 versus 50, 52. So you're actually doing more with your primary fire if you're shooting at close range on a body shot against armor.
Yep, that's correct.
Most of the time, like the good idea that, I mean, something to teach people is you primary fire their armor down and then you switch into shotgun because now it's not taking that damage and not every character is just pure armor for HP. Like, I think it's like Reinhardt or Diva, they have a very small portion that's armor at the start. So if you primary fire that down, then you can start shotgunning if they're close enough and you can't really get out.
All right, let's talk about the meme. Let's talk about the Forge Hammer. Talk to us about this thing.
Man,
His most OP ability.
Going from 30 to 55 damage for your melees.
It
and
has
healing
it
your
has,
turret.
and the ability to take away the dignity of your enemies.
The
I mean,
ability to embarrass anyone.
psychological damage, it's off the charts. As far as actual practicality, I mean, the only time to use it, I think, is like, what was it,
Wrong.
grab? Wasn't it
Wrong.
grab, Fuey?
You're wrong. Everything you're saying right now, wrong.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's hear it.
Hey man, I was working on my guide here. All right. There is no reason not to use the hammer over your melee. At all. It does the same cleave damage as melee. It goes past shields, and as a bonus, you reload while your hammer is out.
If
You don't have the reload animation.
that is if you use the hammer for the same exact duration as your reload. You have to wait that 2.2 seconds with the
Yeah.
hammer.
You can melee in that duration if you're
Yeah,
melee.
but you're hammering during that
I
duration.
know, but then you got to count in the weapon swap.
The weapon swap barely takes
Fair.
any time.
We're
Alright,
counting,
that's
we're counting
fast.
fractions of seconds here. I mean,
Actually, you can
How fast
weapon
is it?
swap into an animation cancel, pretty sure.
oh, okay. All right.
Technically.
Alright.
Well,
If
actually,
you hold the clicker when you're switching, I think it's an instant once you switch to the hammer.
But
Okay.
that's interesting though, because there is some merit to using the hammer, like being able to go through shields, being able to hammer
it does
while
better
you're
range,
reloading.
too.
There are some situations where you might run out of ammo, right? And you know you're gonna die. They rush you, they jump you, you're gonna die. It might be worth it to take out the hammer, go through that Orisa Winston shield. I don't know, last ditch attempt. So there's certain opportunities which it seems it is worth to actually use.
Right. I think it's the cleave that's under known about. I don't know whatever word that is.
The
Because
registration of the hit.
well, it hits multiple targets.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
It's the same as a quick melee.
okay.
yeah, your melees will cleave as well. But, I forgot. Yeah, so this is the other benefit of hammer. Hammer gets buffed by overload. Melee doesn't.
Oh,
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, true. Yes.
During overload, you're actually hammering faster. You're doing 55 damage in cleave. This is what Crow's talking about, the grab meme. If, technically speaking, if you graviton people and you are close enough, you can melee them all for 55 damage at the
Each.
same time.
So a
Yeah.
total of like 300 damage per hammer swing.
Yes, if they were all
Yeah.
grabbed
Yes.
right there.
Hey, that's significant.
Yeah, I mean, it is.
It's
For
a
sure.
30% speed buff, and then you get a bonus 100 armor, and it's for 5 seconds.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it is a meme. Yes, it does have some practicality, but if we're talking for low-level players and helping them get better, to say, I would say don't worry
ignore
about
this
the hammer
part.
just yet. That being said, psychological warfare is even more strong in the lower ranks. I mean, if you hammer
yeah.
someone there, they're just going to quit. They're done.
I think that's the real trick. You first need to establish dominance playing Torbjorn really well. After you've shown that you're a really good Torbjorn, then you take it to the next level and you kill him with the hammer to establish even more dominance.
Yep.
Then you buy a hammer.
Look at that.
We
Fury
definitely
has
spent
one.
at least
Oh,
10 more
nice.
minutes
You got
on
the
this
prop.
longer
You
than
got
I
the
thought
actual
we
hammer
would.
over there.
But I honestly thought about getting a couple jokes in and then talking about using it with your the repairing of your turret as kind of the transition here. So let's talk about that. Like,
No.
when is it appropriate to repair it? Is it
Never.
appropriate to repair it? And then how do you want to set up and transition into the talking about the turret here a bit more?
I'm just going to make this easy. Never repair the turret. It is almost always a waste of time. There is no benefit to doing it. You are putting yourself out of position to go heal the turret, and depending on where you put it, it could be any distance away. It could be extremely far away. And you can just throw a new turret out. It does put it on the shorter cooldown, but the benefit is that it's getting full health back. You're not wasting your time. This is time that you could be shooting at people, you could be doing things, or during setup or whatever, which is most of the time when you would probably heal it anyway.
Mhm.
You're just putting it on a short cooldown, which doesn't really matter because the turret cooldown restarts once it dies, so you don't lose out on like any cooldown reverse whatever benefit is.
Mhm.
So just
Sure.
in general, there's no reason to go out and just start hammering it.
Crow?
No, I fully agree. Like I said, it's really useful for cross flank pressure. There's no reason to run away for like 10, 15 seconds to go over there to hit the thing like 4 or 5 times. If that's the case, just throw a new turret I mean, if you want to heal it during downtime, like after you stop their push and there's like that 20 to 30-second gap, I mean, you can do that. But again, if they got some quick guys coming back, maybe you're out of position. It's a pretty big risk just to heal your turret.
It could even be better just to take the destroy on the interact and then throw it up somewhere new to
Yep.
kind of keep them guessing.
So it goes
Yeah,
on a
that's what I
5-second cooldown.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if it's in combat,
If
and
it's
it
out
gets
of
to 10.
combat.
Yes, out is 5, in is 10.
Oh, gotcha.
So the thing is, if it's out of combat anyway, you don't want to destroy it because you can just place a new one.
Yep.
Right. You just throw it
It's-
again instead of
it is
destroy, replace.
Yeah, it's useful if it's in combat, it's low HP, just let it die faster.
Got it.
Now, it does seem like you guys said it's rather a waste of time to be healing your turret and focusing in your turret because you sort of want to set it in a pincer maneuver, right? Where your turret is sort of shooting them from one side, you're shooting them from the other side, usually from safety. And at that point, it seems more important to focus on the positioning of your turret so that hopefully it's not easy for the enemy to just take out. But they have to kind of commit a little bit, right? Or put themselves a little bit at risk in order to take out your turret. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I would just say like the general rule, and Felix can confirm this. Essentially, you want the turret to hit them when a team is at the point of no return.
Mhm.
Essentially, they've pushed far enough into a choke point or a situation where if they wish to back out, it's a complete waste
over.
of time and a waste of resources, and it's just
Mhm.
very disadvantageous for them to back out.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You probably don't want them getting. You don't want them to be able to shoot the turret from like the initial starting point of their push.
Yeah, where
But
it's
as soon
safe
as they
for them.
initiate, 4 to 5 seconds in or 3 to 5 seconds in, that's when the turret starts hitting them, and I think that's just a very general rule that I would go with.
Yeah,
You agree, Huey?
I would agree a little bit.
Okay.
So I like to use Hanamura as an example. For Hanamura, if you put the turret on low ground where it has natural protection and your shield protection, I think it's sometimes better to have it just pelting the shields where they can see it but they still can't access it.
Yeah, I would agree. If you have the shield
Whereas-
advantage,
Yeah. Any position where it's protected by the shield advantage, it's still good. In general, though, Crow's right. If you put it somewhere where they are already in a bad position, like back to Hanamura, they've passed the choke, they're in that open area, they can't really go back, they have to go forward to the bell.
That makes sense.
That's when they have to keep committing, and that's when there's a skirmish going on. It's going to be hard to notice the turret. If they waste resources towards the turret, it's not going towards the players, and all of this is just going on in one tiny, tiny span of time.
Now, what about pre-placing your turret versus holding onto your turret until you see what the enemy team wants to do and then placing it? What do you think of that?
I think having a general idea of this kind of goes back to like low elo players versus high elo players. In general, and high elo players are very predictable with their movements, which you would think would be the reverse. But high-low players tend to go the same places. They tend to do the same things because they want the most efficient path, which they've proven has been this efficient path.
Proven and practiced routes.
Yeah. So in general, in high-low, it's pretty easy to know beforehand where they're going to go. But for like a low-elo player, you want to place it somewhere defensive at the start and then maybe adjust as the game goes on. Because you don't know what these players are going to do. And the lower elo a player is, honestly, the more variance there is in the match of what people are going to do. Because people might not listen. They might have their own ideas. They might like to flank more. Their play styles are very meshed and everything is entirely different. They're not playing the most efficient strategy. They're doing something new.
Sounds good. What about
Can we?
your own positioning? Let's talk about that a little bit because we haven't talked too much about Torbjorn positioning themselves. Aside from the fact that you mentioned that you normally don't want to be very close to the enemy. You have a gun that has no fall off, so it's in your best interest to sort of always keep this certain range and make yourself kind of hard to get to. Sort of if they do dive you, it sounds like they would have to be overcommitted. At which point you have tools like Overload to defend yourself. So are you constantly trying to do this? Are there any times where you try to get on the aggressive, get in their face, or for the most part you're playing very defensively, very kind of greedy?
I would say personally, I don't play very smart. I am very comfortable with the hero, so I like to go beyond the boundaries of what you should normally do. But in general, it's best to play back, and players do have different play styles, aggressive versus defensive, but the most efficient style would be to sit in the back line, sit by your supports, spam down shields, help protect your supports, and be this utility support type of DPS. You know, the same way how if there's a problem hero, someone picks McCree, they flashbang them for when they flank, and they're dead, and now they have to pick something else or just their playstyle. That's kind of what you're doing with Torb. You're stopping people from playing the way they're trying to play to get into your backline to get and do all these things. You're essentially picking a person and saying, "You're not allowed to do that anymore. I'm watching you."
Kind of the guardian DPS character.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give some credibility to Fuey's style of play. Like,
just to confirm that he can play.
yeah,
Let's
it's-
backtrack here a little bit.
because he plays like we both play the same type of way with whatever hero. I think no matter what hero we play, we do it the same way. We're heavy flankers, even if the hero is or is not made for flanking, and we try to take these duels on the side. Again, with Overload, if someone is pressuring your team on the side and they're alone, I think if you're close enough to the core of your team, it's completely acceptable to Overload, get in their face, and either push them back or kill them. So it is fine to be a little detachment that just reaches out and kind of protects the flank and then reaches back in as Overload is ending. So
Yeah.
you can definitely be a little bit aggressive and detached from the team. But what Fuey does is sometimes he'll be in their back lines and he'll just be like, "How'd the Torb get? The Torb is right next to me. Now he's in their back lines."
So would you say that overload, that specific function, operates very similar to Azaria with a personal bubble because it is a defensive type of a tool, but yet offensive? It's enabling you to do those type of things.
Yeah, that's a pretty good comparison because you can use Overload offensively. You can use it to chase someone down and get rid of them. You can use it defensively to run away and protect yourself while providing good damage. It does do what Zarya's bubble does. It allows her to change her playstyle to whatever's needed. And that's really why I like Torb, because you can play him very differently. These are mainly, like what I'm saying before, is playing passive. That's mainly the suggestion for how to play him at the most efficient level if you don't have like
Sure.
a full understanding of the character, you know?
Sure.
Now
Sure.
there
So-
does seem to be a sweet spot for the overload. Sorry, Rob. Just I want to sneak
No,
this
go
in
ahead.
here. Because it does seem that if you pop it a little bit too soon, the enemy might have a chance to disengage you, right? Just be like, "Oh no, he's an overload. Peace out of here," right? But you don't want to pop it too late that it might be a little bit too low on health. Or how do you usually approach that?
That's usually it's actually like as far as Overwatch fundamentals go, it's the same thing as attack versus defense. It's the advantage the attackers have is if the defense ults early, the attackers don't have to attack; they can just back off.
Right.
But if the attackers ult, the defenders can't back off. Right? They have to defend. They have to keep that point and save it. So
The initiative.
Yep, and I would kind of apply that same logic to Torb, where if you're an attacker with Torb and you're initiating it, then yeah, I think Overload is great, and you can initiate combat with that and get it done. But if you're using it defensively, the attackers do have the ability to just be like, "I'm not dealing with this guy. Like, I'm just going to back off for 5 seconds, come back in and kill him." And I think that actually takes a pretty good awareness if we're talking low SRs
Mhm.
that understand that what you didn't work and just let it go and get back in proper positioning, rather than you're like, "I have to use this ability. I
Overcommit.
got to get something out." Yeah, and
Yeah,
they're like, "I got to
right.
get something out of it, guys," and they just run into the enemy team and die, and you're just let it go.
Sometimes the attack speed thing is enough and the movement speed, right? Like
Correct.
getting out or using it to just fire more and then get it back and then wait for it. But like I think all of us are saying this is an ability that is not to be used lightly. This is something that should be used on purpose for a very specific reason. Whatever that reason is, we should know what we're going to get ourselves into before we get there.
Yes, yeah, you got to have a thought, have a plan when you're using this ability because it is. I mean, it's Torb's bread and butter right now. Like if you get in an engagement, any engagement, that's what you use to even the playing field between you and the other heroes.
You want to have access to it.
Yep. And if and it's in the same token, if you're playing against a Torb, same logic applies. If you can get this out, you're at a significant advantage.
Yeah, he's down 12 seconds of his defense.
That's your window of opportunity
That's what
against
you're looking
Torb.
for.
Speaking of that, 12 seconds, I think, is one of the longest windows of opportunity in the the
Yeah,
most
that may
abilities
be
are like
like,
6 to 8.
yeah, that only like immortality field, right? It has a longer cooldown.
It'd be like Immortality
Mercy.
Field, Resurrect. I mean, we're talking like team saving, team game changing abilities, and then you're like, oh yeah, Torb. Overlay. You're like, man, that
Also
doesn't make
Torb.
sense.
All of his abilities are very long. They're all very
It's
long.
true.
cooldowns.
Yeah.
Turret
Sleep
goes on-
Dart is 12 and Honor Grenade is 10, so they're also up there. But
Yeah.
those are incredibly powerful tools by
Yeah.
comparison.
Yes.
Versus something that's like, I need to use this like all the time. Honest stuff is like, okay, emergency button, eject, or this is our biggest initiation tool. Like
Right.
that's different.
You gotta heal 4 people. That's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
You press overload.
You better win that duel. Like you still gotta do the 1v1.
Yeah.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something to take into account, or just all the long cooldowns the hero has, and kind of this ebb and flow of using your abilities. Being aggressive and then backing off. With both with your turret and with your overload. And I think
Sure.
understanding this timing is one of the keys to getting better with the hero,
Mhm.
because like Fuey said, it does have a low skill floor, so it's easy to pick up, easy to kind of do a decent job at. But if you're looking to hit the upper echelons of it, your timings better be crisp, and you better know what you're doing beforehand.
Like
Nice.
there's a lot of times in games I'll know when I'm playing bad and it feels really bad. And it's like that because you have to be efficient with these heroes that are not as strong in the hero aspect of them.
Not as
Because
flashy.
like Torb is simple. He has got a kind of jack of all trades type of thing where you have turret damage, you have your damage, you have a little utility on the side, but it's not as like compacted into one character. Like this is a sniper, they're going to do 300 damage to you. This is Torb, he could run around, he could do this amount of damage, he could do that amount of damage, he could do anything really, but it's not anything super powerful in any regard.
Mhm. Now, there's two last things that I kind of want to discuss because we're gonna have to close out the show pretty soon. But one of them is his ultimate. We haven't talked about his ultimate too much, just how you guys approach it. And then the last one was, how do you think Torbjorn's playstyle and his kit translate into other heroes? Do you think that playing Torbjorn for a while lends to maybe translating into somebody like, I don't know, May or Reaper?
Sorry,
Or Zarya, or you think it's a very unique playstyle that Torbjorn kind of just, you have to learn to play him and just him?
Do you want to talk
Sorry,
about
I kind of threw you two
Go
questions
for
at a
all
time.
first. Go for all.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, I love Torbjorn's ult. It's so unique, and honestly, it's one of the abilities that gives you the most options a player can have. You can use it to cut people off. You can use it to corner someone into this little island of death. You can use it to take down tanks. You can use it on yourself to protect yourself from a Genji ulting. There is so much for options that the player has with this ultimate, but it puts him at such a high risk because he can't do anything else. So you have to use your overload before. And if you use your overload before to protect yourself, now you're down your 12-second cooldown once your ultimate's over. It's like a very high risk, medium reward ultimate that has great options that can combo very easily. You can combo with any tank ultimate, really. You have Sigma, like I said earlier. You ult below him. Zarya grab, that's the equivalent of having a Hanzo ult there. And you can do it around them too, so you can spread out the range that the Hanzo ult would be. There's Earth Shatter. If everybody's Earth Shattered, they can't move, they can't get out. It is such a great tool, but it gets kind of countered by a lot of things. It gets countered by any mobility, it gets countered by any shields, really, and it can get out healed a lot of the time. Or if they have Baptiste, it's actually useless because it doesn't reach his thing.
Oh yeah, you can't burn his immortality, right?
Nope.
Yeah, so the immortality just hard counters the ult if it's behind a shield. and you did get the goo, well, they can just stand in it and they don't die. They don't really lose anything.
It asks a lot of the Tor player to have this large swath of macro knowledge and understanding of a lot of the other heroes in order to get these kind of versatile options at their disposal, because they won't recognize how good or how versatile this is until they're actually like monitoring things like you mentioned. Like you gotta watch these barriers. You gotta make sure that you know that it can't go through them. You know, you gotta know how it interacts with a surface when you hit something that's vertical versus horizontal. You gotta know how it's gonna interact with that vertical surface before it hits the horizontal one. You gotta know what you want to do with it before you pop it, just like overload. You got to know if you need to overload when you're using it. You know what I mean? Like there, and then again, the whole thing with the Baptiste, like these are so many things that have to be packed into your head when you're playing one hero. And it's I want to say this too, because it's not unique to Torbjorn. I think that is something that you're going to get as a large piece to any one hero you want to have mastery over. Once you get into the upper echelons, you need this. But when you play a hero that is, for lack of a better phrase, a non-meta slave, like something that's not in the meta that you're trying to get value out of, it will always ask more of you.
Doubles up.
Because you have to think creatively.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what Fuey's saying with it. It's a very versatile, which means it makes it very creative. You got to know what you're going into if you want to be creative. Like, you can't just be creative and if they're running Doom Genji, like, all right, they're just going to fly over everything and just smack you, right? It has lesser of use. So you got to know what you're going up against. I think with the alt, I think it's really good to think, I don't want to say like Maze Wall, but like think of it tactically of like splitting people apart, denying resources from one side to another, stopping people from going to where they have the advantage, right? Like the team wants to get to this spot X because it's really good. Like it has some natural advantage by terrain, like high ground or whatnot. All right, let's make that a lot harder for them to get to, or, you know, like,
or impossible.
Don't make it as easy to get to your supports. You got to think of it like in these really vague terms, which at low SRs that's tough to do. Like it's very abstract. It's not something like, here's flashbang, hit a guy, shoot him in the face, done. It's like, you kind of make it disadvantageous. They may get burned, they may not. They're not going to die. They could. I don't know. But whatever you do, you have to take advantage of whatever this chaotic scenario you created. And the only way to really understand chaos is you've done it so many times that it's wrong. Yeah,
right.
Well, you just live in the madness for so goddamn long. You're just like, oh yeah, I this is madness number 3. I understand this. I've been this before.
It does seem like it's like the ultimate zoning tool, right? We just have to be
a very good zoning tool. But then again,
it's a good offensive tool. It's a good defensive tool. It's how you use it.
Right, but against mobile heroes, again, it doesn't zone at all.
Right. You just have to be very aware of what you're zoning, right? And what is it that the enemy team, where do they want to be, and sort of deny that. Whether you need to get the enemy team to get off the point so yours can get in it, or whether you need to put it at your feet so that the engaging team is now engaging into a puddle of lava, right?
A good way to this is the way to sum it up is like, I think Torb's alt is less useful as a now ability. What you're doing is denying them the next step. It's kind of future proofing your plan.
That's a good way to put it.
It's if it's to push you like the advantage you want, or it's to deny them the advantage they want. You have to deny them. It's just denying them that ability. Reactively, I don't think it's very good. Like if it's a panic alt, I don't think that alt's going to work too well. Yeah.
And it does seem that just like overload, the timing of it is very crucial, right? Like if you miss the window of opportunity, it might be too late and you won't get any value out of it. Or if you do it just a little bit too early, just like with overload, the enemy team can just choose to disengage and wait for it to kind of run out and then take the spot that they wanted to take, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what Andres said about the denying the space that you want to be on as being like that I feel like is a very approachable way of looking at the ultimate, at least initially, to get you to the next step, if that makes sense, from like bronze, gold, platinum range to kind of get up a leg up on how to use the ultimate to the next level. That's a good way of doing it, because especially in CP routes, if you're attacking or defending, you're just saying, look, it's very clear cut what both teams are trying to do. They're either trying to attack or defend this space. So what
Yes.
I can do is I can say you don't belong here, and that's where the ult goes.
Yep. And to tie this in like a segue, if we're all done talking about this,
Yeah, go for it.
a segue into how does it transfer over to other heroes? The alt kind of acts like a tank would, right? Like you're creating that space. It's the same thing like a tank. The way I see tanks is they're faith based. And when there's a tank somewhere, you're like, I have faith in that spot. It's safe. I can go there. And if they have a tank there, you're like, no thanks. I don't have a lot of faith in that spot. I'm not going to go there. Torb's ult does
Look
the
at where I
same
put
thing
it.
where it's like, all right, I've created. It's the whole thing behind space creation. It's like, all right, don't go this way, go that way. I can go this way, or stuff like that. So
He
I think
secures the area for you, for your
yes,
team.
and I think this mental logic that you're doing in your head with the Torb ultimate is this is kind of like your intro to tanks and how to create space and how space creation generally forms.
Oh,
I think it's a good way of thinking of it like that.
yeah, I like that.
Yeah, and I would also say with Torb's turret, it does cover. You got to know map architecture and you got to know maps pretty damn well. And if you're thinking like, hey, they have to at point X, it's the point of no return for their push. That's useful for any hero in the game. That is core Overwatch knowledge, and I think that's great to have.
Mhm.
And transfer to anything.
Very
would
cool.
agree.
Do you
Because,
want to
like,
add anything here for you?
Yeah, like, so for flankers specifically, too, flankers tend to play around health packs. Now, what else does Torb need to know? He needs to know where the health packs are. That's a good route for where flankers are going to be, where you can place the turret, where you can have the turret watch over.
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of this knowledge that does pass on, even if you may not see it, like, initially, to another character. Because you know the roots of the maps, you know the flow that people tend to go with, like, these specific heroes. And even outside of, like, map knowledge, architecture, and all the stuff Crow talked about, like, specifically a character like Kree, I think McCree is a perfect character to transition from Torbjorn into. And I think vice versa, they kind of go together. They do similar damage. They both have this similar thing where they don't really have any protection outside of their one ability. Kree has Flashbang. He does have Roll, but it's not really going to help him that much. He has Flashbang to stop them. Torb has Overload to keep himself up for a bit and out-aim them. And I think positioning-wise and all that, they position and they play very similarly. You can flank with McCree, right? There's plenty of people that play McCree. They go off on a flank, they Flashbang, they win a duel. Or if they miss, then they have to outduel them and they can run away. Same with Torb. Go in, overload, duel, or run away. And I think a lot of like the weaker characters that don't have the like some insane like Mei, I don't think Mei really transitions with Torb as well. They have projectiles, but Mei is more of like this weird off tank role and less of like this utility protection DPS role for Torb. And I think some characters like knowledge wise and all this, they do transfer over pretty well.
Nice. That's a good sum up. Is there anything else that you guys think that is important to say about Torb that maybe we didn't cover? This is a good place to maybe
Closing
do like
words.
more advanced tactics or something that we didn't get to cover yet. And if not, we can close out the show.
What about you, Crow? I got one.
Go with it, man.
Unbind your shotgun. I am not lying. I've done that in GM games and I've performed the same, if not better. The shotgun is such a hindrance at a higher level of play. And it's such a hindrance for a player. It's essentially like a handicap, right? It fires more bullets, so you're going to hit more often if you're worse at aiming. Like, players, if they're actually trying to learn a hero, they really shouldn't have it until they're at, like, a decent level with the character. Because you need to know how to position, you need to know how to play properly within the realm of what your character should be doing. And, like, riskier things should only be done when you're better. And you can perform the risk.
Okay, I like that. It's a good
That
tip.
projectile is hard to get mastery over. I feel like it's taken me quite a long time to get used to it, and still, if I'm not playing Torb like for a good chunk of time, I kind of have to transition into relearning it almost every time I.
It has a big drop off, and it fires relatively fast. I don't feel like there's a lot of other weapons in the game that fire just like the turret. Like there's sort of similar, but the turret is pretty much in its own realm. So I feel like it's harder to practice his aim unless you're playing him exclusively.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to
He's-
get a hold.
He is the only character that has an arcing gun to my knowledge.
Old
Trying to
Hanzo
think.
would be the only comparable.
Zarya,
Old
like
Hanzo, but
Second
yeah,
Fire.
Hanzo's, it's still arcs, but it's so much less.
Yeah, it might as well.
It's a
not.
hit scan for.
That's why I said old Hanzo. Old
Yeah.
Hanzo is almost the same, it was just faster.
Like, there's no real character. That's why I'm saying McCree, because
Yeah.
McCree, he's basically the hit scan version of Torb. They do the same damage.
Sure.
Yeah.
Crow, final words?
I think the only final words I can really think of is bring it all the way around, is what Fury opened it up with, and saying don't over rely on your turret. Understand the hero's worth in itself, and I think that'll take you farther than anything else. The turret's there, it's cool, but don't obsess about it.
Nice, well said.
Sounds good. Let's thank a few people before we get out of here and let everyone promote their channels and where you can find them. So first and foremost, we have to thank our top level sponsors at patreon.com/Omnic Lab. First and foremost, we have Refire, we have Shazir, we have Shepard, Crimson Fail, Brendan D, Krista Playa, Tragic Zach, and brand new to the block, Darren W. Thank you guys so much for your repeated support. Also, we wanted to give a kind of a little block of a shout out to our good friend Ben W, or you guys may know them as Top Score Solutions. He's transitioning to a new stage of life, and having a little one coming in is one of those things. And so we wanted to have a big Omnic Lab shout out and thanks for all of his support from pretty much within the first 3 months of our show launching. He was one of our early adapter supporters and has been here the longest. And so we have a big thank you for you, Ben. And we will not miss you because we know you're listening. So we'll see you around. But thanks again for all your support. Also with the new with the new regular patrons on the block, we have Chris A and Dave T. And we have we're kind of short on time, so I'm just gonna read your names this week. But big shout out to FlickFan7 from USA, Da Vinci PR, which is, I hope his PR is pretty good. He has some pretty good paintings. So, but Da Vinci PR from USA and Laner Dude from Canada for your 5-star iTunes reviews. It is a great way to support the show by listening and leaving iTunes reviews for free. It helps us out a ton, gets people to find the show, see if they want to listen to it, get other people's feedback on a public forum. And so thank you so much for your support there. If you want to find Andres and I on the show, omniclab.com/links will get you anything. That's Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, Twitch, YouTube, merch, and the Discord link. If you want to come in and hang out, you want to see when these guys are streaming, we have a special role. You can see honored guests in green, and you can see, oh, so-and-so is streaming. I'm going to go check it out. So you can click it and go check them out. That being said, Andres, where can people find you?
If you want to find me, you can do so over Twitter at iPlayGames. You spell that IPLAI Games.
Shout out to Shazir for the 1,000 bits at the bottom of the show. Thank you so much for that. And then we have Fui. Where can people find you and all your links?
You can find me at anything labeled Fui500, Twitter Fui500, Twitch Fui500, YouTube Fui500, Discord Fui500. I basically use that for almost everything, so don't steal it.
I love it. The consistency's strong.
And Crow, where can people find you?
Yep, it's kind of the same. It's Pro Like Crow. You can find me on YouTube /Pro Like Crow. You can find me on Twitter and Twitch just /Pro Like Crow. Yeah, very standard.
And you spell Crow CHRO, not like the
Yes.
bird.
Correct. No, that's ridiculous.
Think Chrono Trigger, okay? Crow.
Yes, think Chrono Trigger. It's CHRO. Yep.
The Latin word for time,
Nice.
I believe.
Definitely make sure to check out these guys. Their streams are super cool. If you guys are watching for or looking for some high level gameplay, especially in the Torb realm, and Junkrat as well from Crow, make sure to check him out.
That's going to do it for us on the show, you guys and the gals out there. Thank you so much for listening to 165. Thanks you to the Peanut Gallery and our Torb experts and top 500 player Crow. Thank you guys so much for help. Crow will probably call you back for a rain check for a different hero, maybe
Sure.
one that you feel a lot more comfortable on.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
we'll
why
see.
not?
Maybe we'll have Fui coming in and wreck the party just like you did for his. So
Sure. I mean, yeah,
it's only
yeah.
fair.
The offer's out to Fuey. Yes.
All right. Well,
Oh,
we'll see you
I
guys
almost-
next week. Remember,
I almost forgot though.
Andres.
Before we just close it up, do you want to do like a little quick story time for your
Oh, yeah.
band? Because
Oh,
if
the
not,
banning.
listeners are gonna be like,
The band
"Where's
hammer.
the story?"
I will say we had the best. We had the best time after Fuey got banned. But Fuey, Tell him what happened. How you got the old ban hammer.
I have my own little story. You were living off in your own little world, going on your little crusades against pro players. I'm busy sitting there, like almost in tears, being like, my account's banned. What if my WoW account's banned? All right, that stuff was important to me. I'm like, what's going on? I'm talking to this rep. I'm being like, hey, what's going on? Why am I banned? He's like, well, I can't do anything. But he did say he was a one trick at the time too.
So he understood your pain at least a little bit.
Yeah, and he kind of leaked the amount of reports you need to get banned at the time. He told me, he's like, yeah, it's about 100 reports to get you self-banned. And
so for those who don't know, you got banned basically because you were playing Torb at the time, and a lot of other players simply reported you for the fact that you're one-tricking Torb, and eventually it amounted to a large enough amount of reports that you got banned, right? But it's not like you were being toxic or, throwing on your teams. You were just trying to play Torb, right?
That's all I did. That's the thing. This is like the biggest misconception people say. They say you got banned for playing Torb, but I didn't. I got banned for getting mass reported because I played
by people
Torb.
that didn't like Torb.
Like, I never did anything wrong. I wouldn't have been top 500. I wouldn't have been GM.
But I think it's good. The reason why I like the moment is that it was kind of like Fuey, all faults aside, nicest guy I've ever met. Like super, super kind. Everyone loves him. And when he got banned, it was like kicking the puppy. And Blizzard kicked the puppy. And so all of us one tricks. Like I mean, like 10 minutes later, I had like 6 one tricks knocking at my door. And they're like, Fuey got banned. We got to do something. I was like, all right.
It's like the one trick union arose.
It was hilarious because we one tricked the ladder. It was like me. It was me, Color, Jinx. I forget. It was a lot of one tricks, and we went up against Sinatra, and we beat his ass into the ground with like Junkrat, Torb, Sim, Roadhog. Ashton. It was terrible. It was like the worst lineup you could ever do, and we just.
I think it was on King of the Hill too.
Yes, it was. It was on Lijiang Station.
No.
Oh my word.
But it was really funny. Like
you guys got some vindication.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah, you hated us one tricks, but we just beat your pro. Like it was really, really it was fun. It sucked that he got banned, but it really brought a lot of light to the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Where it was funny because wasn't it Kelvin that stuck up for you?
Yeah.
He was on your team in the game that had happened. And Calvin's like, he did nothing wrong. This is ridiculous. Like, we have to address this. And it kind of brought the whole issue of one tricking and getting banned because of it to light. And like,
I remember seeing that Twitch clip like all over Twitter.
It went around the community like all the
Calvin's
way.
Twitch, yeah.
It's almost like you were the martyr that we needed.
Right, but the thing is, I think it would have only worked because it was Fuey. I think all of us
worked
other
because
people,
it was the Swedish meatball.
and like all those other guys were jerks, and like Fuey's just a nice guy. So they just it just so happened that I think it worked out really perfectly, and Blizzard had to just stop and like address the situation because like I never got banned for one tricking jump.
Yeah, it should have been you.
I was hoping. I was so pissed. To this day, I'm still pissed off that I'm like, why wasn't it me? Why was it like people?
Did I not one trick hard
99
enough?
reports. That's why.
Yeah,
99 reports.
But I think like, the whole whitelisting process that Blizzard does now for not a thing.
I'm 99% sure they've given the task to some intern that when I hit a certain amount of reports, the intern checks. Has anything gone wrong? And then press it. Because there have been times where I've still gotten banned. And then I email them and then they're like, oh, here you go, unbanned. So it's
they
not
just
like
have
a
him on
whitelist.
speed dial at this point.
No,
like, hey, I got banned again.
I think Evil Toaster got banned recently. And his ban got, removed. And the guy on the ticket leaked that there is a whitelist out there.
Interesting.
That maybe the interns look at and they manually look at the names. But there's something out there and like it's you and then it's me. And I don't know all the other
I just
people.
had this really funny mental image of like what in Overwatch would actually Torb's personal intern look like. What poor Swedish boy looks like Torb's intern.
That's an interesting story though. It kind of gives you an inside scoop into Blizzard and how they're still having to work those systems and the casualties on the way of when those
Yeah.
systems go wrong.
Yeah. It was an important. It needed to happen because they've said for the long time, like, you can play whatever hero you want. It's not ban worthy. It's not ban worthy, and then it happened, and processes had to change because of that event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
Couldn't
a problem
happen
with
to a
any
better
automated
guy.
system. Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that's a cool story. Thanks for
All right.
sharing.
Thank you guys for sharing the little bonus clip at the end there. You can have fun with that if you're sticking around still. But remember, don't be a lab rat, be a scientist. We'll see you guys next week. And Crow, Fui, we'll see you guys again soon.
So yeah.
Bye.
We have
Bye.
no outro music for today because I still
Bye.
need to set that up. But do you want to do your best Zenyatta imitation, Rob?
Yeah. I have nothing left to teach you. That's all I have. I can't
The
remember the end of
rest
the transition.
you must learn on your own.
Oh, yeah.
Bye, everyone.